Very good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday edition of the Urban Debate. I am Afrida Rahman Ali. We are going to look at the twin explosions that happened in an Air Force base in Jammu earlier this morning. Now, these were supposed to be bombs that were deposited at the precise GPS location by drones from across the border. That is what initial reports indicate. Now, quite a few indications are coming in that terror groups are now active as they are provoked after the recent developments that have taken place with the Prime Minister meeting the leaders of the Gupkar Alliance. Remember, that was the meeting that took place on the 24th of June, and days after we witnessed this first terror strike, raising the alarm now whether terror groups are determined to scuttle the electoral process. Remember, the Prime Minister made it very clear that the idea is to restore grassroots democracy in the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir. So are these elements now active to derail that process? Those are the questions we will be asking our guests this evening. In fact, we have experts to talk about the various perspectives. The timing, which is critical. Remember, this is also happening at a time where the Defence Minister is visiting Leh Ladakh. Pakistan being an ally of China, does that raise fresh alarm around this issue? We are going to talk about all of these perspectives. Let's welcome Kuldeep Khoda, IPS officer, former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir; Firdaus Tak, spokesperson of PDP; Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson of the BJP; and Maruf Raza, strategic affairs expert and consulting editor, Times Network, also joining us. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I want to first go across to you, Tuhin Sinha, to understand from you that somewhere down the line, of course, everything was going as per script. The BJP had had decisiveness in abrogating Article 370, in stripping Jammu and Kashmir of the statehood and reducing it to 2 union territories, then holding the leaders back in detention. But now somehow the alarm is sounded that it seems terror outfits are active. Would you concede that it is going to be an uphill task? It's not going to be so smooth sailing to reinstall the electoral process and have a democratically elected government in J&K. Can the Modi government do it?
Well, things are still moving according to script. The attack on the IAF airbase is an extension of Pakistan's dubious legacy of perfidy and subterfuge, which they have executed over the last 70 years, starting with them betraying the standstill agreement which both Maharaja Hari Singh had with India and Pakistan. So in the first place, Pakistan, which PDP and National Conference claim is a stakeholder in Kashmir, became a stakeholder because of the duplicity of NC and PDP. They were never a stakeholder and they will never be. Now, we are committed to the restoration of the democratic process in Kashmir, and we have a very clear roadmap. The two important milestones for the restoration of statehood is, one, completion of the delimitation process, and secondly, the elections. And there is no other way that we can think of going about the entire process. Vajpayee ji in 2003 had given a slogan, Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat or an Insaniyat. Modi ji has added the importance of Hindustaniyat and Bharatiyat to it, which has been made possible by the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, the two vicious articles which had impeded a robust and complete integration of Kashmir with India. And when PDP, since I know PDP will say that these two articles are linked to the accession of Kashmir to India, no, they are not. The accession, the instrument of accession signed on 26th October 1947 is the same which India signed with 500 princely states. And Article 35A came into being in May 1954, a good 7 years through a very stealthy process of ordinance. Why? Because Nehru had to compensate Kashmir for the Kashmir conspiracy case of 1953, which was ill-conceived.
But Tuhin, let's not forget, now we are talking about the terrorist activities. Now we are more concerned about this, about the immediate circumstances. Though I will put your question across to the PDP spokesperson. In fact, Firdaus Tak ji, why don't you take that question in terms of why has the PDP leadership set this condition? As we heard today, Mehbooba Mufti saying that they would like India to engage with Pakistan, and of course also bringing up the restoration of Article 370 as a condition for participating in election. What is the thinking behind this? What is the reason that you have put up this condition, Mr. Tuck? Mr. Tak, you'll have to unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. There are two aspects of the question you have asked me. One is the observation made by the learned spokesperson from the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mr. Sinha, and another observation by you. One aspect that you just asked me that why Mehbooba Mufti ji has put a condition for contesting or participating in any kind of election until and unless the government of India talks with Pakistan. So these are your words you are referring to. She has never said this. In fact, what she has said is that the government of India has to talk to Pakistan if we want peace, not only in Jammu and Kashmir, but in the entire subcontinent. Another part of the question is what Mr. Sinha observed regarding the accession, regarding the Article 370. I think he belongs to a particular university of RSS in Nagpur. I have clearly no doubts. The interpretation they are being taught at Nagpur and at the Shakhas, that is completely different interpretation from rest of the world. The entire world is watching what Prime Minister today extended invitation to the people, to the mainstream political leadership to come to Delhi and talk on Kashmir. This sudden change of heart is not only the summer slot by the Bharatiya Janata Party, but various internal and external factors are responsible for this. But at the same time, we reiterate that even the attack which happened today in Jammu at the Air Force Station is a testimony of the fact that Jammu and Kashmir is directly facing the brunt of any conflict between India and Pakistan. We have borders on in the state. We have the border touching Pakistan. We have the border touching China. And please accept this fact that whenever there is a hostility, not only with Pakistan, but even if with China, it is people of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh who will be facing the brunt. And it is obvious and it is natural for us to at least demand and seek a peaceful negotiation between the two neighboring countries, the two nuclear powers, to ensure peace on our borders and internally in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
Okay, so you are saying that there is no such condition set, but you believe that these kind of terror attacks are happening for lack of engagement with Pakistan. Did I get you correctly that we need to engage with Pakistan and only through dialogue or discussion can we have any let up in terrorism or militancy? Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Tuck?
What Mr. Sinha was right now saying that Prime Minister, that we are not talking to Pakistan, we won't talk to Pakistan. His own government is talking to Pakistan through diplomatic means. And it is outcome of this negotiation that we are seeing a complete lull. We are seeing a peace on India and Pakistan border, on the LOC, and people, particularly the army community,
since the abrogation since 2018,
have a sigh of relief.
Terrorist activities have come down substantially. We have data to suggest that terrorist activities have come down both in the valley and in Jammu. But of course, now we are seeing a spot. How seriously are these to be taken? Are these really attempts to scuttle the electoral process? That is the question we are looking at. Okay, let me bring in the former DGP as well to address those issues for us. Mr. Kuldeep Khoda, your understanding of what is happening here, because, you know, this has been a pattern. This has happened before the J&K Assembly elections, the Uri attack. This has happened before the DDC elections as well, just days before that. There was an attack in Srinagar. So it is nothing unusual that we have seen that whenever an electoral process is activated or initiated, there are terror activities. But here you have a discussion that has happened with the center. The process was just about initiated and you have these terror attacks. Do you see a direct link?
Absolutely. You know, the coincidence has been too much in the past also, and Pakistan stands totally exposed as far as these coincidences are concerned. Whether it was bus traveled by Mr. Vajpayee to Lahore in 1999, which was followed by Kargil War. And later on also, when the bus service was started between two parts of Kashmir, the Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Kashmir of Vidas, there was attack on the tourist reception center. That was the origination point of the bus service for the passengers traveling across. When the trade was started in October 2008, it was followed by Mumbai blasts. And then in run-up to any elections or any positive development, Pakistan has felt always nervous and frustrated, resulting in launching of these attacks. They don't want Kashmir to stabilize. They want to keep the pot of terrorism boiling, though, so that the Kashmir issue remains in international focus. Now, after this Prime Minister's talks, which was a very positive development, and Pakistan got unnerved because the response from the Kashmir leaders has been very positive, and they have come to the table. And the meeting was held in a very conducive atmosphere. It is to be followed by delimitation, the fresh elections, and the promise of restoration of statehood also. This is too much for Pakistan to digest. And they will obviously look to escalate the terrorist activities. And a few days back, there was a bomb blast outside the residence of Hafiz Saeed, the LET chief in Lahore, in which Pakistan has tried to blame the external agencies.
Yes.
And that has also, probably been one of the causes. But Lashkar and Jaish, in liaison with the Hizbul Mujahideen, who provide the logistic support locally, they stand too much exposed. During the past 1 year or so, many catches of arms, ammunition, and the drugs also, which has been carried across the border through drones. Police has seized it, the security force have seized it, and more than that, the wonderful job which the security force and the police have done in reducing the levels of terrorism in Kashmir to almost levels of lowest levels. And more than that, also again, I should say the separatist activities have come down very, very drastically. The stone pelting is obviously now missing totally. And this has all resulted in frustration in Pakistan. They are going to try and escalate the terrorist activities in response to all these developments. And in today's incident, obviously, it has to be most probably the Lashkar module in liaison with the Hizbul Mujahideen, and two of them have been arrested today, from which an IED of about 6 kgs has also been seized. So this case will be cracked now that the NI has also come into it, and this will be this case will be cracked. But the requirement is now that India has to make it cost heavy for Pakistan to indulge in these activities. It's high time. We have had the Uri strikes. We had the Balakot air strikes.
Yes.
We have to follow it up.
No, I get your point, Mr. Khoda. You're making a very valid point that, yes, terrorist activities have declined, separatist activities have declined. But then we cannot simply say that system is working this way. Obviously, as the Prime Minister said, we need to restore a democratically elected government, and we are in the process of that. Maruf Raza, would you agree that Pakistan, of course, is miffed with these developments, and now there is an attempt to scuttle the process, as we have seen in previous cases? And do you also see a dual challenge here? Because there is, of course, and this has happened at a time when Rajnath Singh is visiting Leh Ladakh. There's supposed to be talks at the military level there, so it's a huge diversion as well, isn't it, Mr. Raza?
You see, there are a number of issues, and the informed experts have talked about mostly about J&K related Pakistan's policies of sponsoring cross-border terrorism. But there are other elements also, so I'm going to try and declutter it. First is the Kashmir part of it, because that's where most of the discussion has taken place. You see, I've always believed you solve the problems in Kashmir, you will not have a problem of Kashmir. The fact that we take so long to come around to some kind of a blueprint and a roadmap to address the issues which the Kashmiris have been asking for and are sensitive about, we are unable to ward off Pakistan, which wants to put its feet and muddy the waters. So there is that one element. The second thing is that Pakistanis, if you ask them in a straightforward manner, and I've interacted with some, and I've done a lot of study over the Kashmir issue, and believe me, no Pakistani will ever give you a straight answer. What is it they want for the Kashmiris or the Kashmir issue? They said a fair and equitable settlement. Does that mean settle status quo as it exists? Does that mean accept the LOC as a boundary? Does that mean give the whole erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir all to the Kashmiris as an autonomous body, or give everything to Pakistan? They will not objectively answer any of these questions. So the point is that Pakistan is essentially, I see it as a troublemaker. And because it is the one unifying adhesive that keeps Pakistan together, without anti-India slogans and Kashmir being the rallying point for Pakistan, the country has nothing to hold itself together. Even Islam doesn't hold it together. And I'm saying that as a Muslim who's quite familiar with how things happen in this side and that side of the border. Now, let me tell you about the drone. I would assume it's a drone attack because it happened from the top. The drone attacks are possibly carried out by Pakistan for a variety of reasons. One is that, as the distinguished police officer brought out, that every time there is an initiative over Kashmir or India-Pakistan relations, there are party spoilers. Within Pakistan, the deep state is divided, where General Bajwa extended an olive branch, but there are other general officers who resent his going soft on India because they then lose their own hardline constituencies. Then Pakistan's civil politicians and the civilian elite are also divided on how to engage with India. Please understand, there are many initiatives that are trying to find their feet and emerge as the one central initiative to go to, whether it's backdoor diplomacy, whether it's some meeting at some other international forum, or is it that Pakistan would like to keep the pot boiling over Kashmir? Because as was brought out, if there is a settlement over Kashmir, then Pakistan again feels sidelined. They have enough of their plate as it is because they want to control all of Afghanistan. They don't know really where they're going to get the resources.
Which means, Maruf Reza, the challenges are huge, isn't it? Going forward, the Prime Minister and the centre may have a clear roadmap that we are going to do the delimitation at a fast pace. We are going to have elections for the union territories, but it may not be as smooth sailing. Tuhin Sinha, on what the PDP spokesperson said about how you are underplaying the importance of dialogue with Pakistan, and therefore dealing with these terrorist activities will be the first big challenge before you can even think of having an election. And also that to a certain extent is an unpopular decision with the people on ground who have not accepted the decision of a union territory. So to have an election, not for a state, that decision is pending, but for a union territory, your challenges are many at this stage, Tuhin Sinha.
Well, first of all, in the DDC elections, which were held in December last year, a combination of 7 parties which were mostly fighting with each other, called the Gupkar Alliance. I mean, NC and PDP could never see eye to eye. They got together, and yet they barely managed to cross the BJP's numbers. So the fact that the Valley has not accepted our decision is a wrong interpretation. They have accepted it and they have moved ahead. In fact, if the PDP today decides not to contest the election, BJP, that would only add to PDP's redundance, which they don't realize. And I repeat over here, it is PDP's and NC's opportunist flirtations with Pakistan which has compounded the Kashmir issue. If Pakistan, we are ready for talks with Pakistan, but Pakistan is not a stakeholder on Kashmir. That's the issue. How does Pakistan become a stakeholder? That is something which they can't explain, because Pakistan's association with Kashmir began by breaching a standstill agreement with Maharaja Hari Singh had with both Pakistan and India. So fact is, I think they need to realize reality, and this reality should have only dawned better after this meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister. We are ready for the democratic process. We are ready to restore statehood, but there is no compromise on Article 370, 35A, and the fact that Pakistan is not a stakeholder on Kashmir.
Yes, which is interesting, isn't it? Because of all the regional parties, it's your former ally, Mr. Sinha. It's the PDP, which is at this stage not exactly on the same page. Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Mr. Tak.
Well, I will request Mr. Sinha to come and
Firdaus
visit
Taqi,
Jammu and
please, go
Kashmir.
ahead.
Well, I will request Mr. Sinha to come and be here with us in Jammu and Kashmir to really assess and understand the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. Don't try to project yourself as an expert on Kashmir affairs by reading the literature and the booklets you have been provided in the shakas. That won't make you a Kashmir expert. You have to understand, on one side, you said that Pakistan is not a stakeholder. We don't say that it's a stakeholder. You say that PDP and the regional other parties are claiming Pakistan to be a stakeholder. We merely say that you have to engage with the neighboring country to ensure peace. If you say there is no third party intervention required, why are you talking to Pakistan? Your own government is talking to Pakistan if Pakistan is not a party. Why are you talking to China if China is not a party? You have made China a party to Kashmir. Why are you talking to people in Afghanistan, the Taliban, if you don't need to engage with them? Why you are following the directions and interventions of United States of America? This is completely on record that even the 4G services in Jammu and Kashmir were restored, and the mainstream political leadership that includes even the former chief minister were released on the intervention.
But Mr. Firdaus Tak, you said earlier that this is not a condition for you. Much as you believe in the importance of engagement with Pakistan, which Mr. Tuhin Sinha does not agree, at least are you agreeable to holding elections for union territories of Jammu and Kashmir unconditionally? Let's have a final word on that, Mr. Tak. Is PDP okay and on the same page with the other Gupkar Alliance leaders when it comes to participating in elections? Because we are hearing different voices on this, sir.
You have to understand, Kashmir is not about elections. It is not about delimitation. It is not even about 370. It is the political problem which has engulfed entire Southeast Asia. This is a bone of contention between the three nuclear powers. We have been time and again saying that Kashmir can be a bridge of peace.
But your partners of the Gupkar Alliance has conceded that it's a matter sub judice. They agreed not to discuss it and take it further at this point. So why are we going back to that issue time and again? Right now we need to focus on the issue of restoring the electoral process. Firdaus Tak, will PDP contest elections is all I'm asking you. Will PDP contest elections whenever it's held and whenever the dates are announced?
Will contesting an election or participation into election by PDP, National Conference of any political organization will bring peace in Jammu and Kashmir? Has it ever? I'm honored to have.
But it is in your interest, isn't it? You might give a walkover to BJP or its allies if you do not contest. I mean, it's going to come back to bite you if you do not contest. It's very much in your interest.
This is not a question.
This is an important point. We'll have to continue this. Yes. Yes, this is a point which will have to be discussed threadbare. I'm afraid I've run out of time, but I think we got very important perspectives on the issue of hostility now coming from across the border. Whether drones were used by Pakistan-based terrorist groups, that is the question that must be addressed. As our experts said, it is something that needs immediate attention, as does the issue of holding elections in the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir. I thank you very much for joining us, Kuldeep Khoda, Tuhin Sinha, Maruf Raza, and Mr. Firdaus Tak for giving us your time this evening.